All right, welcome back to Schlide Into Sports, live on 103.1 FM on WVLP Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Schleier, aka Schlide, and here on the show, we typically talk about the rules and regulations and the trickle-down effect into college sports, throughout college sports, but since we're kind of on the back end of college sports, not a lot going on right now, but every once in a while I do provide some updates regarding those rules and regulations for specific sports or for all the sports. This week, we've got history at the Kentucky Derby, NBA playoffs heating up, and a shift in how champions are being recognized at the White House. Let's get right into this. All right, so we're going to start off with the Kentucky Derby. So, absolutely historic moment. First female trainer gets their win at the Kentucky Derby. And this is huge because, well, I mean, obviously, it's the first female trainer to get a horse to win. But just to add some context to how important this is, for the first ever Kentucky Derby was held May 17th, 1875. 1875, that's a really long time ago. More than 100 years ago, long time ago. That's what I'm talking about right here. But not only that, but the first female trainer to ever start a horse in the Kentucky Derby was Mary Hirsch in 1937. So, it's been a long time coming, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at here. So, yeah. About time that it happens. Kind of surprised, to be completely honest, because when it comes to horse racing, most of the people that I know that are into it or, that do horse racing are females. So I was just generally surprised when I saw that this was the first time that a female trainer has ever had a horse win in the Kentucky Derby. But that also the win kind of speaks to where I'm kind of coming from, because it's a symbolic shift in the sport of horse racing. My generation, maybe next generation up, is, primarily female interest in the sport of horse racing. So it's absolutely huge. I mean, does this open doors for more women? I mean, I think absolutely it does. Maybe it's a one-time breakthrough, but I highly doubt it because, again, like I said before, the people that I know that are in horse racing, primarily females, and they know their stuff. So that's pretty much how I'm looking at it. I don't think this is going to be a one-time thing. If anything, we might start seeing female jockeys start winning as well. So I think that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on when it comes to horse racing in the future for the Kentucky Derby. I mean, from history being made to pressure rising, now I guess the goal is to see it more consistently, right? With that being said, speaking of history, we got to move into the NBA playoffs because the 76ers, they came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Boston Celtics for the first time ever. First time ever that they did that. And I've been seeing some Celtics fans chirping online saying, oh, well, we didn't have Jason Tatum in that last game. Blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? The 76ers didn't have Joel Embiid for half the series, and they still ended up winning. Joel Embiid actually came off of a surgery going into this last game against the Celtics, was on the majority of the game, put on an elite defensive performance, and the Celtics end up losing. And it's like, it's the same old Celtics. I mean, I swear, they're almost like the Cowboys, except the Celtics have actually won an NBA championship recently within the last 5 years. So, they have actually had the excuse to say that it was their year, but this is just ridiculous. I mean, it's like Jason Tatum goes down and gets injured, and obviously, I always hate players getting injured. I don't like it when players get injured. I like it when teams go up against each other when they're at their best, because then you get the most pure outcome. But it feels like every time that Jason Tatum gets injured, it's like the players and the fan base uses that as a crutch or an excuse for their failure. And it's like, Jason Tatum is not the entire team. The Boston Celtics is not just Jason Tatum. There are plenty of good teams that are not plenty of good teams, plenty of good players that are a part of the Boston Celtics. I mean, you look at, like, just looking at the roster, you've got Jaylen Brown, who won Eastern Conference Finals MVP the year that Boston won the NBA championship that year. You have Derek White, Luka Garza, Ron Harper Jr. Like, come on. There are other players on the team besides Jason Tatum. It does not all have to fall on Jason Tatum's back. That's not how it works. That's not how team sports works. It doesn't just fall on one player's back, but that's besides the point. New York Knicks, they win against the Atlanta Falcons in their series 4-2. They closed out those last couple of games relatively strong. I mean, you look at the just the overall series outcome, and I mean, it started off with New York getting the win, then Atlanta. Atlanta was up 2-1, but then the Knicks win 4 straight, getting them their win. So, yeah, but then they actually played in their first game of their second series against the 76ers, where they completely dominated. I don't really know how else to describe the outcome of this game, but they just completely dominated the 76ers 137-98. I mean, that's damn. That's a score right there. But yeah, then Detroit, they escape Orlando. That was a Cinderella story that almost happened. They closed out the series 4-3. I guess Orlando didn't really want to win. I don't really know what else to say about that, but I mean, they have one of the more expensive rosters, at least when I did my research. Apparently that is the case, but yeah, Detroit being the number 1 seed and almost getting bounced in the first round, kind of bad for Detroit, and they're about to go up against a Cleveland team that's pretty solid. But the thing with this Cleveland team is that, I mean, you look at how they kind of let things happen with Toronto. They really should have ended that a game earlier, but it didn't really seem like either team wanted to win the series. But they have James Harden, and normally people would be like, oh, he's a really good player, but he is not a very good defensive player, especially in the postseason. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Cleveland fares against this Detroit team, which I think this Detroit team is a little bit more balanced. Cleveland does have Donovan Mitchell as well, but like I said before, it takes more than 1 or 2 guys. You got to have like a solid starting 5, and I have a little bit more faith in Detroit's starting 5. That series begins today. Another series that began was the Minnesota-San Antonio series. San Antonio, they closed out their series against Portland with a 4-1 victory. So the outcome of this first game where Minnesota won, not entirely surprised, just because you finish out your series a little bit earlier than everybody else. I mean, granted, Minnesota only had like 1 to 2 days where they were playing more basketball than San Antonio, so not much more, but still, I mean, it's a long time when you close out your series 4-1. Seems a little bit like a breeze, but then you're going up against a tougher Minnesota team who doesn't have Ant. They don't have Anthony Edwards, which I that's a huge loss for Minnesota. Minnesota and Denver both, it was like the battle of the just absolutely injured teams. I mean, Jokic was out for some of the series. Ant was out towards the end of the series. So now, you've got a wounded Minnesota team going up against San Antonio. San Antonio is pretty healthy right now. Wemby's still healthy. So, again, Minnesota getting the win, kind of surprising, but not really, just considering the fact that they've had a little bit less of a break. And in basketball, that's kind of a good thing. But, yeah. Then you've got, for the rounding out the series is, got Lakers, Rockets. That concluded where the Lakers won 4-2. Oklahoma City, they swept the Phoenix Suns 4-0. So they're going up against the Lakers with a pretty big break. Houston, they started to kind of come back a little bit in the series. The Lakers almost blew a 3-0 lead. It would have been the first time in NBA history for that to ever happen. But the Lakers, they were able to get it done, and I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, the Houston Rockets, they didn't have Kevin Durant, which, again, I've been saying this throughout the broadcast so far. It's not just one player that makes the team. You have to have the depth. The depth does matter. You can't just put $500 million on one guy and expect that team to make it to the championship. That's not necessarily how it works. But yeah. So no revenge match for Kevin Durant going up against his former team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. But honestly, at this point, that's not really surprising, just because Kevin Durant really, ever since he left the Warriors, has not really done anything substantial in the NBA playoffs. Like, really at all. So I'm questioning the legitimacy of how good of a player he actually is. I think he's also kind of in his older years. So, yeah, that is what it is. I mean, Luka for the Lakers was injured in this series the entire time. He has a hamstring issue, but the Lakers were still able to pull it out. Why? Because they have a little bit more depth. They have Austin Reeves. They have LeBron James. Like, they have more guys. They have more experienced guys too. So, it was just not a good matchup for the Rockets to start with. So I think I could see the Lakers maybe getting a win over Oklahoma City, but just looking at the history of these two teams this year, doesn't look very good. Oklahoma City, in every single game that they played against the Lakers this year, just absolutely dominated them. It was just complete and total domination. It didn't matter if the Lakers were 100% healthy, if LeBron wasn't playing, if Luka wasn't playing, if Austin and Luka weren't playing. It literally did not matter. The Lakers just could not beat Oklahoma City. I wouldn't be surprised if they squeak one out in game one, just because Oklahoma City hasn't been playing for a hot minute in comparison to everybody else. But they're also going to be more well-rested, so I could see Oklahoma City coming in and maybe getting it done, or at least in the first game. But Oklahoma City should absolutely 100% win this series. The way they played against Phoenix, I wouldn't be surprised if they sweep the Lakers here too, which is kind of an anticlimactic take, but to be honest, I don't really care. I don't really care, because it's the truth. That's the thing. So, yeah, but San Antonio, Minnesota, I think San Antonio will probably end up winning in this series. I think they probably will. It'll probably come down to the wire. I mean, if Minnesota is already going out and getting a win in this series in game one, I could see this going to 7 games, 6 games. Could see it being a 4-2 series, 4-3 series. But I am leaning towards San Antonio in this series. Then for, I guess, Cleveland, Detroit, I said earlier, I like Detroit, and the way the Knicks are playing, I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks swept the 76ers, because I couldn't even tell you the last time the 76ers made it to the conference semifinals. So, yeah. And then I guess moving more into even further predictions, Knicks versus Pistons. I mean, the way the Knicks played the past couple of games against Atlanta, the way they played against the 76ers, I wouldn't put it past them to get past Detroit. I think that would be one where the Knicks would be a little bit more challenged, where it would go the full 7 games. But I think the Knicks could get that done. I think they could move on to the championship game. And honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards a Oklahoma City versus New York Knicks championship series. I could see San Antonio maybe giving Oklahoma City some trouble, but Oklahoma City, they're such a deep team. They're a really good team too. So I mean, for my championship series prediction, I'm gonna have New York Knicks versus Oklahoma City Thunder. That's my prediction for that. I'm not necessarily gonna make a prediction on a champion just yet. I want to see what Oklahoma City does against the Lakers today. I mean, I already have that extra data of the Knicks going up against the 76ers, who took down the number 2 seed. So I want to just get a little bit more data on Oklahoma City versus Lakers, see what they do. If they're a little bit more challenged, maybe the Lakers don't even challenge them. That will have an impact on my prediction as well. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, we've got those 2 series games today. The Cavs play the Pistons at 6 today, 6 p.m., and the Lakers play the Thunder at 7:30. So that'll be the opening games for those series. I think it should be a pretty interesting series for both of these, I guess, series is because you look at the setup of these teams. Detroit and the Thunder are kind of set up very similar in terms of depth. They have more depth. There's not necessarily one player that, I guess, shines out over the rest. They're just both well-oiled machines. And some people might argue with me and say, oh, but what about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? Well, it's not just him on that team that you could also make arguments for being stars. You look at Chet Holmgren, right? You look at Jared McCain. Well, he hasn't really been putting up much stats, but he's a big face on that team at least. Alex Caruso also, you could make an argument for him being one of the main guys on that team. So I think they have depth. They have depth at the top of their team, which I think that's important. So, and they're also young players, so they're not getting paid as much. They don't have to get paid as much as a Kevin Durant or LeBron James or Steph Curry, right? So they're able to, teams like Oklahoma and Detroit, because of their draft stock that they accumulated after not making the playoffs and being pretty terrible for about 5, 6 or more years. Oklahoma City maybe less. I'd say Oklahoma City probably around 4 years, but just being terrible and being able to make trades, like those trades that we saw where Oklahoma City traded away Kevin Durant, they traded away Russell Westbrook for draft capital, and it's paying off. I mean, if you draft well and you develop, then you're going to be in a great situation because you're able to bring in all these young guys that are ambitious. They want to put in that work, and you get them to build chemistry and cohesion on the team, so that way you can develop a dynasty. You go from just being a one and done championship team to a possible dynasty. And this year, I think, at least in terms of the NBA playoffs. I think it's actually going to be very interesting to see what happens, because in the 2020s, so each decade there's normally a dynasty, right? In the 2000s, there was the Heat dynasty, there's the Spurs dynasty. They were battling back and forth. In the 2010s, you had the Cavs and the Warriors kind of battling back and forth as well. But in the 2020s, there hasn't really been a dynasty. There hasn't really been a dynasty. There's been a lot of one and done champions. There's been a different champion every single year in the 2020s so far. I mean, the Warriors have won one, Celtics have won one, Denver has won one, the Lakers have won one, and Oklahoma City has won one. So it's been a different team every single year, and each of those teams has been at very different stages of their journey. I mean, you look at the Warriors, and I guess you could even argue the Lakers, because this is when the Lakers won theirs, it was one of the first years that LeBron made it there. It was also the COVID year, so there's kind of an asterisk on that championship. But the Warriors and really LeBron, I guess, kind of on the back end of their careers, on their older years, where not going to have as much depth, but the talent at the top kind of shines through and carries. I guess they bring out the best in the other players. But Oklahoma City, the way that they have their team built, they have it set up to be a dynasty. So Oklahoma City and their team is now going to be battling the trend this decade in the 2020s of no dynasties. Oklahoma City could be the first real dynasty in the 2020s, which, I mean, that's a huge deal. They'd be the first team in the 2020s to win multiple championship series in the decade, and they would also have one back-to-back, and they would have won one back-to-back for the first time since the Golden State Warriors, again, back in the 2010s, 2010s. So that would be a huge deal. Now, you also have, kind of following the trend here, teams that could challenge Oklahoma City on that trend. I mean, I guess you could really argue any of the teams that are left, but at the same time, not really, because you look at the Lakers. The Lakers have already won one in the 2020s. So if the Lakers win one, or if they somehow get past Oklahoma City, and they somehow get past either Minnesota or San Antonio, and then play either New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, or Detroit, and win that series, then they would be the first team in the 2020s to win multiple championships in this decade. You also have teams that are trying to win their first championship after a really long drought. You look at the New York Knicks. I again come back to them. You look at Detroit. Cleveland hasn't won. Again, Cleveland hasn't won one since the 2020s. Still kind of relevant in the playoffs. They have a shot at getting their first one in the 2020s. Minnesota, they're a small market team. They haven't really won anything. You look at San Antonio. They haven't won one since the 2000s, maybe early 2010s, like 2010, 2011, 2012. But San Antonio has not been in this situation in a while. Even just the conference semifinals. I mean, they haven't been in this playoff picture for a long time now. At least 8 years. At least 8 years since San Antonio's been here. San Antonio could win their first one of this decade. So there's teams that are kind of following this trend, but there's also teams that are challenging this trend of, being a different team, like winning their first championship in that decade. The Pacers, if they had won last year, would have also challenged that, or they would have followed that trend, is what I mean. There's teams that follow and challenge the trend. So I guess if you're an NBA fan, my question to you is, do you want the trend to continue? Do you like it when there's a different team each year in this decade that wins a championship? Do you like it when the love is kind of sprinkled around, so to speak? Or do you want some kind of established dominance like maybe Oklahoma City, where Oklahoma City can go on a dominant run. Maybe they win this year and then maybe they win next year too and they establish a dynasty. Do you want a dynasty back? I mean, some people, they like having the dynasty just to have somebody to root against. So I think it's definitely something to be, it's left to be desired for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my thoughts right there on the NBA playoffs. We're going to take a short little break and hear a message from our sponsor. When we come back, though, we're going to talk about the White House visit, Fernando Mendoza being a notable exemption from that White House visit. We're going to talk about why he's not visiting and I guess sort of justifying why he's not going, because, I mean, what he says is completely reasonable, in my opinion. And I think we're also going to talk about NHL playoffs because there's a little bit more time than I had thought there was going to be. So with that being said, here's a message from our sponsor.
This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schleier at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com.
All right, so we're back. Let's talk about the White House visit really fast. So we know that this is going to be on May 11th. We know that the team that is confirmed to go is IU football. That has been confirmed. There is going to be other teams there, but they haven't been confirmed just yet. They'll probably be confirmed maybe right after this broadcast or later this week. But yeah, for right now, it's just Indiana football. But this is kind of a trend that the White House has been moving towards anyway, where, I mean, we haven't really seen as much of the singular visits. I mean, we've seen singular visits for the professional sports teams, but for college, it's kind of moving in a different direction where it's more of a ceremony than just a guest visit at this point, which I don't really hate that, to be completely honest. I really don't mind that, but I think for the athletes, they probably were expecting to go and have it be just them, but it's more about the college sports. Like it's more about celebrating all of college sports and not just what's it called? And not just about the singular sport. It's about celebrating all of college sports, every single sport. Men's basketball, swimming, diving, track and field, tennis, golf, football, all of them. So, yeah, it's expanding recognition across, just beyond major programs and all programs, which, again, I think that's a good thing because it gives these athletes more spotlight, more opportunities. So, more athletes getting recognized. The con is maybe less individual spotlight and it feels less special, but it's a real change in tradition, and I think it's something that could be. I think that's something that will probably stay. But like I said before the break, I did note that there was a notable exemption from the White House visit, or I guess celebration of champions ceremony, the White House, and that would be Fernando Mendoza. And the reason why he is not going to be there is because it is his first day of rookie training camp, ROTCs. So he's got to go. He's got to train. He's a he's in the NFL now, and he said it himself. He feels like he's at the bottom of the totem pole at the Raiders organization. And, some people were expecting him to get the starting spot. I mean, I don't think that expectation is necessarily the same anymore because of Kirk Cousins being there. I think Kirk Cousins probably will be the expected starter. However, Fernando wants to earn the respect of his teammates, show that he's there to help the team win, whether he's starting or he's on the bench learning behind Kirk Cousins. But I think him opting out of that visit is completely understandable, and I would probably do the same thing if I was in Fernando's position, to be completely honest, because I mean, you look at, like, I guess the timing of it, like, it feels like he would be just kind of locked into the past even just for a little bit too long. It's like, well, I mean, you could also argue, yeah, it's just one day, you can go, but if you're like, you could say that any day. Like, if it was the 7th day of ROTCs and Fernando's like, all right, I gotta go to my ceremony from the team I was on last year. Like, that's not really gonna sit well, I don't think, but that's just my opinion. I would rather be focused on the future than, staying too long in the past. And that's something that Cignetti has made pretty clear, at least maybe not directly, but indirectly, when we look back at quotes that Fernando Mendoza has had earlier this year, talking about how Cignetti didn't allow him to train at the facilities, at the IU football facilities, to prepare for the NFL draft, for the combine, for his showing day. He had to get a membership at Planet Fitness to stay active and stay prepared and get prepared for those things. And that was Cignetti indirectly saying, hey, you're not the quarterback of this team anymore. We're looking ahead to the 2026-2027 season, so you got to go. And Fernando, like, with this action that he's taking here, he's taking that to heart. And that's exactly what a good athlete does. They listen to their coach and mentor, and like, he's just doing what Cignetti kind of told him to do, whether it was directly or indirectly, but that is what was said. But yeah. All right, so NHL playoffs. We're now in the second round of the NHL playoffs, and it's been quite a fun little series, or at least a fun playoffs, that's for sure. You look at the Penguins versus the Flyers. The Flyers, they get it done, or they take the series over the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know what it is with Pittsburgh and not being able to move on to the second round of a playoffs in football, basketball, or hockey. This year seems to be an exception, I guess, but oh wait, no, it's just Pittsburgh. So it's baseball, hockey, and football. Those are the three. Not basketball. Basketball's Philadelphia, not Pittsburgh. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting that Pittsburgh is just kind of stuck in the first round of the playoffs, and they can't move up, they can't move down. It's like they're stuck in the middle somehow, and it doesn't seem like they're going to find their way out, but maybe they will. The Hurricanes, they sweep the Senators in their series 4-0. Absolute domination. I mean, it was the number 1 seed over the number 4 seed, so I guess that's not entirely surprising, but still. Montreal, they take out Tampa Bay 4-3 with a miracle goal at the end. Went off of it went off of a player's skate and into the net. It was absolutely insane. But yeah, Montreal, they move on to play the Sabres, who beat the Bruins in their series 4-2. That was a very eventful series, to say the least, as well. I remember watching some of that. It was violent, to say the least. But yeah, that sets up the second round of the NHL playoffs. You've got the Avalanche versus the Wild in the top of the Western Conference bracket. You've got the Golden Knights versus the Ducks in the bottom part of the Western bracket, or on the western side of the bracket. On the eastern side of the bracket, at the top, you've got the Sabres versus the Montreal Canadiens. I didn't realize that was their name. I didn't realize they were called the Canadiens. But anyways, and then at the bottom of the Western Conference side of the bracket, you've got the Hurricanes versus the Flyers. I think all of these are going to be quite interesting. Some of these series are already starting to play out. Currently, Colorado, the Avalanche, they lead 1-0. The Golden Knights, they lead their series 1-0 as well. And Carolina currently is leading the Flyers in their series 2-0. So they're way ahead in their series, but the Sabres and the Canadiens haven't even started their series yet. Their first game is actually going to start tomorrow at 6 p.m. The next game, the only game that's going to be on tonight for NHL, is the Avalanche versus the Wild, the second game of the series. That's going to be on today at 7 p.m. Colorado, the odds are -2.5 or -205 for Colorado. So Colorado is favored here. I don't know if that's for the game though, or if that's for the series. But if it's for the series, then that makes sense. But yeah, that game is going to be played tonight. Yeah, with that being said, there's a little bit more time than I thought there was going to be. So let's look at some MLB while I have you guys here. So a lot has happened since the last time we talked about MLB, obviously. I mean, the last time we weren't even in the double digits for wins and losses. Most teams had single digits for their wins and losses, but now we're well into the double digits. It's looking a lot more stabilized relatively, but yeah, we're going to start off with the American League East. We've got Yankees on top with 24 wins, 11 losses. You've got Tampa Bay, 22 wins, 12 losses. Tampa Bay with 16 wins, 19 losses. Orioles with 15 wins, 20 losses, and the Red Sox with 14 wins and 21 losses. What happened to the Red Sox, man? I don't like they're a historic franchise, but they just have not been really doing much recently, which is not necessarily good. But kind of surprised that Toronto Blue Jays are down in third just because of where they finished up last year. I mean, they went to the World Series last year. They didn't win the World Series, but they made it to the World Series, and they made it a fun World Series, to say the least. But, again, you have a team that made it to the World Series, and now they're 16-19. It's just a little odd, but it's still kind of early in the season, though. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I think still a couple months left. But for the American League Central, Detroit, they're on top, kind of. They're tied with the Guardians. They're both 18-18 with their records, both at 500 for their wins and losses. I don't know what American League Central and American League West. Oh my goodness. But yeah, Tigers and Guardians, they're at 18-18. White Sox are 17-18, so they're third right now in the American League Central, which is better than what I've seen the Sox do the past few years. That's for sure. They've been kind of hanging down there at the bottom, but now they're third in their league. Then you've got Kansas City at 16 and 19, right below the White Sox, and then you've got the Minnesota Twins at 15 and 20. And then for the American League West, you've got the Oakland A's on top at 18 and 16. Got the Seattle Mariners 17 and 19, Texas Rangers 16 and 18, Houston Astros 14 and 22, and the LA Angels 13 and 23. Now, Oakland A's, that's definitely a team that I was not expecting to see at the top of the American League West standings. That is for sure. That's a team, again, kind of like the White Sox, like I mentioned before. They've been kind of just hanging down there at the bottom of the league standings. They haven't really done much, but yeah, I mean, if the standings really show anything, it's that Tampa Bay and the Yankees have pretty much just been kind of running through the American League, and everyone else in the American League is kind of at the same level relatively. I'd say maybe there's 2 or 3 levels of separation between some of them, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, that's the American League. We're going to move on to the National League now. We've got the National League East. The Braves are on top 25 and 11. I think that's the best. Yep, that is the best overall record so far that I've seen. Then you've got the Washington Nationals at 16 and 19, tied with the Miami Marlins at 16 and 19. The Phillies are at 15 and 20, so just right below those two. And then the New York Mets are hanging down there at the bottom, 13 and 22. National League Central, Cubs. I mean, last time we were talking about the Cubs, they were at the bottom, but Cubs are now at the top of the National League Central. So the Cubs, 23 and 12 currently, one of the better records overall. I think they have the 4th best record overall, if I'm not mistaken, at least in all the leagues. But yeah, that is correct. The 4th overall best record in the MLB. So yeah, they're on top. One of the rivals of the Cubs, the Cardinals, down there in second, right behind them, 21 and 14. Then you've got the Cincinnati Reds at 20 and 15. So those 3 teams kind of tight right there in the standings. I mean, really, this entire league, the National League Central, is a very tight race. You got Cincinnati Reds 20 and 15, Pittsburgh Pirates 19 and 16, and the Brewers at 18 and 16. So the top of the National League Central is really still anybody's game if you're looking at it. I mean, like I said before, there's still a lot of baseball left to play. So there's a lot that can happen between, now and even the beginning of June. But yeah, this might be the tightest standings that I've seen so far. No, it is the tightest standings that I've seen so far out of the 6 leagues in the MLB. So yeah, I think going to be extremely difficult to predict who comes out of the National League Central right now, just again, because of how tight it is, because of how close all the teams are. All of them have winning records. This is the only league out of the 6 where I've seen that this year. So it's looking like if there's a World Series champion, it will probably be coming out of the National League Central, just looking at that alone, just considering the facts that all of these teams have winning records. That's a good tell that they're dominating the teams that are in the other leagues, that are in the National League West, National League East, American League. Like, they're just dominating. They're beating teams that are outside of their league, which is normally a good sign of which league is the superior league, right? So yeah, it'll be very interesting. This standings almost looks like it's actually flipped on its head, because if I'm remembering correctly, the Brewers were actually on top in the standings, and now they're on the bottom. Pittsburgh is still in their same spot, and I think Cincinnati was ahead of St. Louis. So it's a bit flipped since the last time I looked at it, but wow. And then National League West, you've got Dodgers at 22-13. Right behind them is the Padres at 20-14. Then you've got a little bit of a gap. The Diamondbacks at 16-17. And then you've got the Giants at 14-21 and the Rockies at 14-22. So not nearly as eventful. You have the clear front runners in that race for that playoff spot. The Dodgers and the Padres, those are the two teams that are going to be primarily battling for that. In the National League East, it's really looking like Atlanta has it. I mean, granted, it's only 9 game separation, so there's a lot more than 9 games left in the baseball season. But I mean, when you're the only team in your league that's above 500, I feel like that's a general good tell that you're going to be getting that playoff spot. Again, it's still really early to make that assessment, but like I said, when you're the only team that's above 500, their win percentage is .694. The Nationals and Marlins are at .457. Like that's that's more than 0.2% for winning. Like that's a huge separation when it comes to winning. It says that they're behind 8.5 games. So yeah, just not ideal there. And then I guess going back to the American League, just looking at who has the best chance right now to come out on top in their league. I think it's really a three team race, and I'm being very generous when I say that, just because I mean Tampa Bay and the Yankees, I think they definitely have great shots at taking the top of their leagues. But the only reason why I'm saying it's a 3-team league right now, or at least 3 teams have the best shot at getting to the top, is simply because of where Tampa Bay, or not Tampa Bay, where the where the Blue Jays were, the Toronto Blue Jays were last year, because they made it to the World Series, and they're currently 3rd in the standings. They're right below 500, but they're behind 8 games. So I think if there's a team that is under 500 that can climb themselves out of a hole, I would think it would be the World Series runner-ups, Toronto Blue Jays. So, I mean, we'll see what happens there. American League Central, kind of the same as the National League Central, except the opposite, because everybody in the National League Central has winning records. In the American League Central, all the teams are either .500 or lower for their win percentage. So the thing that I'm saying is similar, is that it's anybody's race. Anybody can take that spot. The Twins could take that spot. I mean, they're 15-20, but you look at it, they're only behind 2.5 games, which is kind of insane, but it's true. But yeah, it's anybody's game in the American League Central. We could maybe see the White Sox in there. We have this is a nice opportunity to see 2 Chicago teams possibly make the MLB playoffs. I mean, that would be pretty huge to see the White Sox and the Cubs in the playoffs at the same time. It's very rare that we see that. It's true, though. It's really rare that we actually see that happen, where the Cubs and the Sox are in the playoffs at the same time. But yeah, it's just very, very intriguing. And then American League West, we've got the Oakland A's, Mariners kind of at top there. I think they're relatively separated, but kind of like the Central League, it's still very close. I mean, the furthest behind is the LA Angels by 6 games to the Athletics, but otherwise, I still think it's really anybody's game. The A's are the only ones above 500 right now, but I mean, there was another league earlier where it was the National League East where the Atlanta Braves were above, were the only team in their league above 500, but they they had about an 8.5 game gap in between them and second place. So there's a little bit more room for error for them, but when you've only got one team above 500, two teams behind you that are only 2 games behind you, one of those teams is 5 games behind you and another one is 6 games behind you, it just feels a little bit too tight for me. I feel like it's a little too close for comfort. But yeah. But yeah, that is the main thing there for MLB, just kind of going through the standings. I did want to kind of bring up the point, or kind of go back to the point of the Cubs and Sox, the rarity of them being in the playoffs at the same time. And the short answer to that question is actually, in the modern MLB playoff expansion era, they have never shared a meaningful postseason run at the same time. Kind of insane, but yeah, they've just never been good at the same time. This year, now the Sox may not necessarily be good considering the fact that they're, in the American League Central, where everybody is kind of mediocre at best, but we could see the Cubs and the Sox in the playoffs at the same time. For the first time in this expansion playoffs era. So I'm very intrigued, to say the least, because I grew up on Chicago Cubs baseball. So seeing those two teams in the playoffs at the same time would be insane. But I mean, that'd be like seeing IU and Purdue in the March Madness tournament at the same time, which with the new playoff expansion, which actually that's the last thing that we're going to be talking about today, is the March Madness playoff expansion. That expansion is now official. They are officially expanding it to 76 teams, and I've talked about it before, how I didn't really think it's needed, and I still don't. My mind has not changed on that, especially the way the bubble teams played last year. Completely unnecessary. Why on earth would you want teams that are on the bubble, that were going in on losing streaks, to play in the March Madness tournament when all of those teams looked beat up, tired, didn't want to be there, I guess, to put it in simple terms. But I just don't understand I don't understand why they did it. I don't know. I don't understand why they did it. I mean, actually, that's not necessarily true. I mean, it's obviously for money. That's the obvious and short answer. But sometimes if you try too hard to get money, then you're going to destroy the sport, and you're going to end up losing money in the process, because viewers are going to be turned off when the sport gets more destroyed, when it's not as entertaining to watch. I mean, one of the most entertaining parts of March Madness is that first round. It's that first round of 64, that round of 32, where we could maybe see a Cinderella run. Now, we didn't really see a Cinderella run this year. We didn't really see one last year, but the chance of it happening, that is what brings people to the television at the end of the day. That's what brings people to watch the games. That's why people will watch a 116 game. That's why, like the Duke Siena game. That's why people would watch that. right? To maybe see Duke lose to Siena. That would have been absolutely insane. They were this close. They were this close, but would have been absolutely insane to see. But now it's making it a lot tougher for those teams to really do anything crazy and historic with their Cinderella runs. And with this new expansion, I mean, the path is going to be longer for the Cinderella teams. Because if you think about it this way, with the expansionist era, there's going to be more play-in games. Which teams do you guys think are going to get screwed by this new format? My guess, and it will probably be correct, is that the teams that are not in the SEC or the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12 or the Big East, the teams that are not in those conferences are going to end up being screwed and get put into these play-in games, even though a lot of these teams, the way that the format worked is that they win their conference, and then a lot of them would get spots in the main bracket, in the, round of 64, instead of having to fight for a spot in the round of 64. But I guess not. I guess that's not the era that we live in now with college basketball. But yeah, when it comes to college sports, with college basketball and college football, like college football, I wanted that playoff to expand. I wanted that to expand to 12 teams. I thought 12 teams is good. I still think 12 teams is good. I don't think they need to expand it anymore for a while. There's really no need to. I mean, I understand, money, like everybody's watching and I get that, but like you also don't want to destroy the sport. And I mean, there's going to come a time where it's going to need to get expanded again, but it's just not now. It's not now. And a lot of people don't want it to expand again just yet. It's just not time. It's just not time. And we're going to know when it's the right time, but we just can't force it. We can't force it. That change has got to happen naturally. Just like with the 12-team playoff, that was a pretty natural change. And Florida State being left out the way they got left out a few years ago, the year before the 12-team playoff started, that's really what kind of kicked it off at the end of the day. And that kind of led the natural change. And that's kind of what led people to accept this 12-team playoff. But with this March Madness expansion, there wasn't really anything to kind of justify expanding it, especially with the teams that were left out. There just wasn't really any justification for it. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. That's why I don't really like it. It just doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like it's time to expand the March Madness tournament just yet. But that being said, that's all that we've got time for today. Next time, probably going to be talking about enhanced games. Enhanced games is coming up in like 2 weeks-ish, 2 to 3 weeks, very, very soon. So going to be talking about that, talking a little bit more about some of the athletes that are going to be participating in the enhanced games, just kind of about the profile, just kind of laying out the profile of athletes that are participating, and also the if there's more college rules and regulation changes that occur, like the March Madness expansion or the 5 years in 5 years, like last broadcast, going to be talking about that as well. I'll keep you guys updated on all of that, but if you don't want to miss anything, go to WVLP's website. You can also subscribe on the YouTube. You can go to Spotify. You can go to Patreon, millions.co, all the other podcasting platforms, and the show is going to be available there. It's first available at WVLP, though, Tuesdays at 2. So if you want to get the scoop as soon as possible, go to WVLP. If you end up not being able to listen at 2, then go to the podcasting platforms. But I also post on social media, the TikTok, Instagram. It's all Slide Into Sports. And yeah, I'll see you guys all next week. hopefully summer comes soon. But yeah, see you guys next week. Slide out.